With all the beer styles going on in the world today, it's nice to be able to have a solid blonde ale recipe to fall back on. This particular batch, I wanted to be a little experimental to see what yeast I prefer. I split the batch with half being fermented with Imperial Flagship A07, which is the Chico strain, and half fermented with my favorite strain for hazy IPAs and bitters, which is Wyeast 1318, an English strain. Now, the grain bill for this batch is very basic. It's 2 malts. You have American 2-row, I use RAR, and then Weyermann Munich malt. Percentage-wise, we're talking 78% 2-row, 22% Munich. And the hops, only 1 hop. We're using good old faithful Centennial. It gives a nice, clean dash of citrus with a little bit of that resiny pine to kind of balance out what I would consider heavy portion of Munich malt. And as you see later in the tasting, it does just that. Comment down below what you listen to during brew days. I'm all over the place. I primarily float between reggae style music, post is dear to my heart, and a few others. The mash out is complete, so we're going to start sending this wort off to the kettle and then start the sparge. This batch in particular, I got the highest mash efficiency I ever have, 95%, which resulted in a little higher ABV beer than I was planning, but nonetheless, it was a great brew day, and I'm still trying to figure this system out as long as it's been. It's kind of all over the place. This actually was a double brew day for that guy right there that you see on video. For his wedding, we brewed a good old-fashioned American wheat ale. Brew days are my favorite day, but so are my chicken's favorite days. They love the spent grain. If you don't already have anything to feed your spent grain to, try and reach out to a neighbor or someone that you know that you can give it, even if it's a little bit. It's really cool being able to see the grain's life go full cycle. I'm going to stop talking now so you guys can enjoy the rest of the brew day. I'll catch you guys when it comes time to keg. Before we keg, we always have to fill some CO2 filled balloons for our cold crash to ensure no oxygen exposure, or at least minimal, as much as we can avoid. Definitely look back in some of my older videos for a detailed way on how I keg. All my beers were what I believe to be the least amount of oxygen pickup possible when it comes to homebrewing. Take a peek below the fermenter. You see on top of the freezer that puddle? That's leaking beer. One of my biggest problems that I have with these fermenters is that damn threaded valve. I hate that thing. If these came with tri-clamp fittings, they'd probably be some of the best fermenters out there. I know Spike makes a Flex. I have yet to use one, though. If I had the option, I definitely would sub out the brew bucket for that, strictly because of the tri-clamp. Wanted to give you guys a glimpse of what both these beers look like today. They've been in the keg for roughly 2 weeks. So we have the flagship here, fermented Imperial Flagship A07. And then this half was fermented with Wyeast 1318, which is my primary strain of choice when it comes to hazy IPAs. Let's cover the recipe real quick, and then we'll break into both these beers. It was 78% two-row and 22% Munich. We're looking at a total IBU calculation of 30, which I highly doubt. This was all done on Beersmith 3. I would put this around the 15 to 20 range. And this was solely hopped with Centennial. OG of 1050. The Imperial fermented batch finished at 1008. 1318 batch at 1010. So let's break into both of these beers. We have the Imperial fermented version and then the 1318 fermented version. An American yeast versus an English yeast. If I'm gonna go ahead and say my preference, it definitely would be the American, the Imperial Flagship, the Chico strain fermented version. So again, it's more clear. This thing will be crystal in about a week or two. It's pretty nice now, but there is definitely some haze left in there. Aroma, you get a little bit of a hop presence, and I'm just talking general terms here. You get a little breadiness. You get a little fruitiness, a little citrus note from the Centennial. So let's go ahead and break into the taste. So what I think about both these beers is that the American, or the Chico, or Imperial, we're going to call it the Chico because that's what it is, it's very defined in comparison to the 1318 fermented batch. And what I mean by that is you really can kind of pick out individual flavors in the beer rather than them kind of homogenizing and kind of being one. You really get that upfront bready sweetness. You can definitely pick out the Munich. Me personally, if I were to make this again for myself, which I'm not much of a blonde drinker, I would probably back off the Munich. I'd probably go 90% two-row and maybe 10% Munich. I think the 20 is a little heavy. For me personally, it's very easy drinking. The malt sweetness up front, you get a little dash of the Centennial with a hair of bitterness, kind of round out the malt flavor. You get a dash of the citrus. You get a dash of the resiny pininess to it that is really complementary, again, to that malt flavor. It finishes very clean and crisp. It's a nice, clean beer, easy to drink. I think this is a very, very good beer. If you want something A little more on the malt flavor, malt sweetness, so to speak, side. Stick with the recipe, 78% two-row, 22% Munich. If you want something a little lighter, try the 10 to 15% Munich and fill the rest with two-row. Break into the 13-18 version. Right off the bat, you get more fruitiness in the aroma. Classic English yeast fruitiness. Let's break into the taste. The yeast is fairly dominant in this batch. It's more fruity from the yeast, very much so. You get a little bit of the malt flavor and perceived sweetness, not as clear and concise as you do out of the Chico, but it's there. The hop character, however, is much more restrained than it is in the Imperial Flagship fermented batch. It's still crisp. So which beer do I prefer? I personally enjoy the Imperial Flagship fermented version of this beer more. I enjoy the crispness, the ability to kind of distinguish flavors. It's a little less muddled, but that's to be expected on an American ale strain that really lets everything in the beer shine through, when an English style strain really has a more heavy involvement when it comes to flavor, aroma, and a lot of the characteristics of the beer. It's not the yeast's fault. It's just what I prefer. If you really enjoy that English style quality more, I definitely would suggest fermenting this blonde with the 1318. I think it's phenomenal for what it is. Again, I personally prefer the American fermented over the English, but that's just me. If you guys have any questions, please ask me in the comments down below. I really enjoy making these videos for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy watching them. If there's any style in particular that you would like for me to brew for you guys to watch, again, comment down below and let me know. If you enjoy these style of videos, please consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel. If you really enjoyed this video in particular or found any value out of it, please consider giving me a thumbs up. That really helps other people find this video and get some of that value that you got out of this as well. I'm Dylan with Hop Killer Brewery, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Cheers.